Single dad was paid to ruin a blind date with a dwarf girl, but her reaction changed everything. At 38, he found himself juggling two worlds that seemed to pull him in opposite directions. On one side, there was his work, a modest job in accounting that paid the bills but left little room for excitement. On the other, there was his home, a small but cozy apartment filled with the laughter, chatter, and occasional chaos of his 10-year-old son, Max. Life had taught him to be practical, to plan every step, and to never let anyone or anything catch him off guard. But despite his careful nature, Jason couldn't help feeling that something was missing, a quiet ache in his heart that had lingered since his divorce 3 years ago. He remembered those early mornings after the divorce, when the apartment had been eerily quiet, the smell of coffee filling the air as he tried to hold himself together for Max. The boy had been the only constant, a small anchor in a world that seemed to spin too fast. Jason had thrown himself into fatherhood with determination, but that didn't make loneliness any less sharp. There were nights when he stared at the ceiling after tucking Max into bed, wondering if he would ever find someone to share his life with, someone who could understand both him and the little whirlwind who had taken over his mornings and evenings. It was one of those ordinary Tuesday mornings that everything began to change, although Jason had no way of knowing it at the time. He was in his favorite cafe, a little place with chipped paint and mismatched chairs that somehow made it feel homey, sipping a black coffee and scrolling through emails on his phone. Max was at school, and Jason had finally carved out a quiet hour for himself. He liked these moments, rare and fleeting as they were, when he could sit, think, and feel like an adult again rather than just a dad. Then his phone buzzed with a message that looked unusual. It wasn't from a friend, or from Max's school, or even from work. The sender was unknown, and the text was brief but strangely compelling. "I have a task for you. It's unusual, but it pays well. Meet me today if you're interested." Jason frowned. Tasks and payments were nothing new in his life, but something about this felt different. Curiosity pricked at him, as it often did. After all, he had always been practical, but he had also learned not to ignore opportunities. By mid-morning, Jason found himself in a quiet part of the city, outside a small office building he had never noticed before. The receptionist directed him to a plain, dimly lit office where a man in a dark suit sat behind a desk, looking entirely too calm for the nature of their meeting. "Mr. Parker," the man said smoothly, "thank you for coming on such short notice. I'll get straight to the point. There's someone we'd like you to meet, a woman named Lily. We want you to interfere with her upcoming blind date. Nothing dangerous, just subtle." Jason blinked, momentarily taken aback. Interfere, that wasn't a word he liked to hear. He had spent his life trying to avoid hurting others, yet here he was, being offered money to do just that. "Why would I do that?" he asked cautiously, his eyebrows knitting together. The man leaned back, clasping his hands together. "Because we can pay you well and we trust someone with your discretion. She's expecting someone else entirely, and your role is simply to make sure the date doesn't go as planned. That's all. No harm, no confrontation, just interference." He handed Jason an envelope thick with cash and watched him carefully. Jason stared at the money. His mind raced. He was tempted. Bills were piling up. Max needed new shoes, and the apartment's heating system had been giving him trouble all winter. The thought of making his life a little easier was hard to ignore, and yet a part of him resisted. He didn't like the idea of manipulating someone's life, even for money. It felt wrong. But another, more practical side whispered that life rarely gave second chances like this. After a long pause, he nodded slowly. "Okay," he said, surprising even himself. "I'll do it. But I want to be clear, I won't hurt her, I won't embarrass her, just subtly make the date go off track." The man smiled, satisfied. "Perfect, that's all we ask." That night, Jason couldn't sleep. He kept thinking about Lily, the woman he had never met. What would she be like? How could he make a date go wrong without causing real pain? He went over scenarios in his head, imagining awkward pauses, misplaced jokes, little stumbles. But then, just as he was about to fall into a spiral of anxiety, he pictured Max's face, bright and trusting, and realized something important. He wasn't good at deceit. Even small lies made him uncomfortable. He had always been a man who valued honesty, and the idea of pretending, especially with someone as vulnerable as a person meeting someone new for a date, felt heavier than he expected. The day of the date arrived faster than Jason was ready for. He dressed carefully, wanting to appear natural and unremarkable, the kind of man who could blend into any scene without drawing attention. Max had insisted on giving him a small pep talk, and Jason had laughed, ruffling his son's hair, grateful for the boy's naive but genuine confidence in him. "You'll do fine, Dad," Max had said, eyes wide and serious. "Just be nice." Jason drove to the cafe where the date was to happen, his mind a mixture of anxiety and resolve. He arrived early, taking a corner seat where he could observe without being noticed. The cafe was buzzing with life, the smell of fresh coffee mingling with the sweet scent of pastries. He watched people chatting, laughing, and typing away on laptops, feeling an odd sense of normalcy in the ordinary scene. And then he saw her, Lily. She was unlike anyone Jason had expected. Small in stature, yes, but radiating a quiet confidence that made her presence impossible to ignore. Her hair was neatly tied back, her eyes bright with curiosity and warmth. She was laughing at something on her phone, completely unaware of the world she was about to enter. Jason felt an unexpected pang of admiration. She didn't look like someone he could simply interfere with and walk away. She looked real. As he waited, he thought about the plan, about the ways he had rehearsed to subtly sabotage the date. But now, seeing her, it all felt wrong. Every scenario seemed petty and cruel. She didn't deserve a fake smile, awkward pauses, or subtle insults. She deserved kindness, respect, and perhaps, if he was brave enough, a genuine connection. When the man she was supposed to meet arrived, Jason felt an odd sense of relief. Maybe he wouldn't have to act at all. Maybe just being there, observing, would be enough. And yet part of him knew he couldn't simply walk away. Not yet. He had a responsibility in some strange way to both her and to the promise he had made. Jason's mind raced, trying to reconcile his desire to follow through with his moral instinct to do no harm. He realized that no matter what happened, today would teach him something important, not just about Lily, but about himself, about what kind of man he wanted to be and the kind of example he wanted to set for Max. As he took a deep breath, trying to steady his nerves, he reminded himself that life was unpredictable. One simple date could change everything in ways he could never anticipate. And maybe, just maybe, it would change him too. Jason sat quietly in the corner of the cafe, his eyes never leaving the small figure of Lily as she adjusted her bag and glanced around, waiting. Every now and then, she smiled at people passing by or at the barista who called out their names. Jason couldn't help but notice how easily she seemed at home in the space, like the world didn't intimidate her. He had expected nerves, hesitation, maybe even fear from someone meeting a stranger on a blind date. But Lily looked calm, curious, and full of life. That simple observation made Jason's stomach twist. How could he possibly ruin this? Moments later, the man she was supposed to meet arrived, a tall figure with an overly confident smile. He waved awkwardly, glancing at the menu before heading to Lily's table. Jason's heart sank. Everything he had rehearsed, small jokes, slightly misplaced comments, little awkward gestures, now seemed unnecessary. He realized the man was nothing special, ordinary in a way that would have made a real connection with Lily unlikely anyway. But Jason knew he had a role to play. He had to follow through, even if just subtly, and that thought made his palms sweat. As the date began, Jason sat back and observed. He noticed the small details he might have missed before. The way Lily's eyes lit up when she laughed, how she listened carefully when the man spoke, nodding politely but not too eagerly. She seemed genuine, present in the moment, treating this stranger with courtesy and warmth. Jason felt a pang of guilt. This wasn't just any date. This was someone's life, someone's chance at happiness, and here he was, thinking about interference as if it were a casual assignment. Jason tried to focus, reminding himself of the plan. Maybe a few awkward questions, a comment that might seem slightly off, just enough to make the man stumble. But then Lily spoke, and he froze. Her voice was gentle yet confident, carrying a quiet humor that drew the man in despite his awkwardness. She asked questions that were thoughtful, interesting, and sometimes playful. She wasn't just making conversation, she was connecting. And Jason, watching silently, felt something shift inside him. He noticed the man struggling to respond, fumbling over words, trying to match her energy. Jason felt a mix of satisfaction and discomfort. He was supposed to be the cause of the date going wrong, but somehow Lily was doing it herself, effortlessly charming, clever, and unbothered by small mistakes. The thought made Jason smile quietly to himself. He had never expected to feel this way about a stranger on a mission he had agreed to complete. As the conversation continued, Jason found himself studying Lily more closely. He noticed the little things, the way she pushed her hair back when she laughed, the sparkle in her eyes when she shared a story from her day, the way her hands moved as she described her favorite hobbies. She talked about books she loved, small adventures she had taken, and moments that had shaped her life. She didn't seem to notice Jason at all, yet he couldn't look away. He realized that for the first time in months, he wasn't thinking about bills, responsibilities, or his own troubles. He was just captivated. Halfway through the date, Jason caught himself laughing quietly at something Lily said. It was natural, unplanned, and genuine. He had tried so hard to prepare for awkwardness, for disruption, but here he was, caught in the warmth of her personality. For the first time, he felt a strange, unfamiliar desire, not to ruin the date, but to see it go well. The irony wasn't lost on him. He had been paid to interfere, yet he now wished he could step in and make the encounter better. The man across from Lily, oblivious to Jason's inner turmoil, continued to stumble, trying to impress her with stories that fell flat. Jason found himself quietly critiquing the situation, imagining how he could help, but he stayed silent. He didn't want to interfere in the wrong way, not in the way the client had intended, and not in a way that could hurt either of them. Instead, he leaned back and watched, letting the natural course of the interaction unfold. Lily's reaction surprised him the most. She didn't laugh at the man's mistakes in a cruel way. She didn't interrupt or correct him harshly. Instead, she smiled, asked gentle questions, and even encouraged him to share more. Her patience and kindness were disarming. Jason realized that Lily was the kind of person who could make anyone feel valued, even someone who might normally stumble through social interactions. It was remarkable, and it left him feeling strangely protective. He didn't want anyone to ruin this experience for her, not the man, not the client who had hired him, not even himself. Time seemed to slow. Jason's eyes flicked between Lily and the man as he weighed his options. He had rehearsed jokes, awkward pauses, and little tricks to sabotage the date, but every plan felt unnecessary now. There was no need to intervene. Lily's presence alone was enough to guide the situation naturally. Her laughter was light, her questions thoughtful, and her energy infectious. Even the man seemed more relaxed than he had been at the start, and Jason couldn't help but feel a swell of admiration for her ability to turn a potentially awkward encounter into something meaningful. At one point, Lily mentioned her favorite hobby, painting, and Jason's interest spiked. He loved art but hadn't touched a brush in years, always too busy with work and responsibilities. She spoke about the colors she loved, the textures she experimented with, and the joy she found in creating something with her own hands. Jason felt a pang of nostalgia, remembering how he used to sketch in college, how he had once found solace in creating something beautiful. Lily's words reminded him of that lost part of himself, buried under bills, deadlines, and parenting duties. The conversation shifted to travel, and Lily shared stories of short trips she had taken with friends, small adventures that had left big memories. She didn't exaggerate or boast. She simply told her experiences with honesty and humor. Jason found himself smiling again, feeling the warmth of human connection that he hadn't realized he was missing. Every story, every laugh, every glance made him more aware of how unusual this day was, not just for him, but for Lily as well. He noticed the way she listened, not just hearing words, but really understanding them. It was the kind of empathy Jason had always admired in people, the rare ability to make someone feel seen and appreciated. He realized that the more he observed, the more he wanted to protect this moment, to ensure that no interference, no awkward sabotage would ever disrupt it. The initial task he had agreed to felt heavier than he had expected, not because it was difficult, but because he had grown to respect, even care about the person at the center of it. As the cafe began to empty, the afternoon sunlight casting long shadows across the tables, Jason noticed a subtle shift in Lily. She had become more animated, sharing jokes and small insights into her life with ease. She hadn't noticed him, yet his presence mattered. He felt a strange sense of pride mixed with guilt. Pride that he had watched someone remarkable navigate life with courage and kindness, and guilt that he had ever considered undermining it. By the time the date ended, Jason knew something important had changed. He had entered the cafe expecting to follow orders, to perform a task that went against his instincts. But he left with a revelation. Lily was extraordinary, and he wanted nothing more than to see her happy, even if that meant abandoning the assignment entirely. He understood that some connections couldn't be forced, manipulated, or sabotaged. They had to unfold naturally, and he had been lucky enough to witness the beginning of something genuine. As he left the cafe, Jason couldn't shake the feeling that his life had shifted in a subtle, meaningful way. He had met Lily indirectly, observed her, and been struck by her resilience, warmth, and humor. The task he had agreed to complete no longer seemed important. What mattered now was honesty, integrity, and the possibility that this brief encounter could mark the start of something entirely new, not just for Lily, but for him as well. Driving home, Jason replayed the day in his mind, marveling at how unexpected moments could change one's perspective. He realized that life had a way of surprising even the most cautious among us. One ordinary afternoon, one seemingly random assignment, had opened a window to something extraordinary. The reminder that genuine human connection, empathy, and kindness could not be orchestrated. They had to be experienced, shared, and nurtured. Jason knew that tomorrow, and the days after, he would face a choice. He could continue with the assignment, follow through with a plan he no longer believed in, or he could step back and allow life to take its natural course. Either way, the memory of Lily's laughter, her thoughtful questions, and her undeniable charm would stay with him. And for the first time in a long time, he felt a spark of hope, not just for himself, but for the possibility of something real, something meaningful, something worth protecting. Jason couldn't stop thinking about Lily after that afternoon. Every time he closed his eyes, he could see her smile, hear the lightness in her laughter, and remember the way she had listened with genuine interest. For the first time in years, he realized that he wasn't thinking about bills, deadlines, or responsibilities. Instead, he was thinking about her, about the warmth and brightness she brought into a simple cafe. He had come with a mission, a task to subtly ruin her blind date, but now all he wanted was for her to be happy. The next morning, Jason found himself restless, replaying the events in his head. Max had gone to school, leaving Jason with a quiet apartment and too much time to think. He sipped his coffee slowly, staring out the window, considering what he should do next. The client had made it clear that he expected results, that Jason was supposed to ensure the date failed in some way. But how could he even think about doing that after seeing Lily in person? She had a way of making everything feel sincere, every word she spoke filled with honesty, every gesture touched with kindness. He knew he could never make her uncomfortable intentionally. The thought alone made his stomach twist. Jason's mind wandered to the stories she had shared. The way she had talked about her hobbies, her travels, and even the small adventures she had taken with friends showed resilience and courage. She had lived her life fully without complaint, and yet with an awareness that few people possessed. Jason realized that Lily had a strength he admired deeply, one he hadn't encountered in years. He felt a strange combination of guilt and admiration. Guilt for agreeing to a task that went against his instincts, and admiration for the woman who had so effortlessly shown him what genuine courage and kindness looked like. By mid-morning, Jason had made a decision. He couldn't complete the task as intended. The more he thought about it, the more impossible it seemed. He tried to rationalize it. Maybe the client wouldn't notice if he didn't intervene, maybe Lily's date would simply fizzle on its own. But deep down, he knew that wasn't enough. He couldn't be part of a plan that would potentially hurt someone, especially someone like Lily who had done nothing to deserve it. He was still lost in thought when his phone buzzed. It was a message from the client, reminding him to act, urging him to follow through. Jason stared at the screen, feeling a wave of frustration. The money was tempting, no doubt about it, but he couldn't ignore the growing sense of responsibility he felt toward Lily. This wasn't just a job anymore. It was about being honest, about protecting someone who had already shown him more humanity than he could have imagined. As the day wore on, Jason found himself thinking about Lily in moments both large and small. He thought about how she had encouraged the man to keep talking, how she had listened with patience, and how she had treated every moment as an opportunity to connect rather than judge. He realized that in a world filled with self-interest and hidden agendas, Lily was refreshingly different. She reminded him that life didn't always have to be transactional or competitive. It could be simple, kind, and full of unexpected joy. That evening, Jason sat with Max, helping him with homework while stealing glances at his son's eager expression. Max's laughter, bright and carefree, reminded him of the importance of honesty and integrity. Jason realized that if he was willing to deceive someone like Lily for money, what kind of example was he setting for Max? He wanted his son to grow up knowing that doing the right thing mattered, even when it was difficult. And now, more than ever, he knew that completing the task as intended would go against everything he wanted to teach his son. Over the next few days, Jason wrestled with a growing sense of moral conflict. He had accepted the job, after all, and walking away meant losing the money he desperately needed. Yet, every time he thought about taking action, he saw Lily's smile, her curious eyes, the warmth of her voice. It wasn't just guilt anymore. It was something deeper, a realization that he wanted to see her thrive, not stumble because of him. He began to understand that true courage sometimes meant making sacrifices, even when it was inconvenient or financially challenging. Meanwhile, Lily had moved on with her life, unaware of Jason's internal struggle. She continued with her daily routine, meeting friends, pursuing her hobbies, and maintaining the cheerful demeanor that had captured Jason's attention. But for Jason, every interaction he remembered, every word she had spoken, had become a lesson in empathy and patience. He began to admire her not just for her charm, but for her ability to face life with grace, humor, and confidence. He realized that Lily had a quiet strength that could inspire anyone who took the time to notice. One evening, Jason decided to take a walk to clear his mind. The streets were quiet, the winter air crisp against his face. He replayed the date in his mind, focusing on the small moments that had left an impression. The way Lily had laughed at a minor joke, the way she had encouraged conversation, the way she had maintained her authenticity despite the awkwardness around her. He felt a growing determination to do the right thing, even if it meant refusing the client and losing the money. Integrity, he realized, was more valuable than temporary gain. The next day, Jason received another message from the client. The tone was sharper this time, more insistent. "It's time to act," it read. Jason stared at the words, feeling a mix of anxiety and resolve. He knew he couldn't follow through, not without betraying his own values. The thought of interfering with Lily's life, even subtly, made him feel physically ill. He realized that some opportunities were not worth pursuing, especially if they came at the expense of someone else's happiness. Jason spent the rest of the day thinking about alternatives. Could he redirect the plan without causing harm? Could he somehow ensure that Lily's date went smoothly without revealing himself? Every idea seemed complicated, but one simple truth kept returning to him. Honesty was the path he had to follow. He could no longer see himself as an agent of disruption. He had to choose a different way, one that aligned with his conscience and the lessons he wanted to teach Max. As the week passed, Jason's feelings for Lily grew stronger. He found himself smiling unexpectedly, thinking about her stories, imagining conversations they might have if given the chance. It wasn't just admiration anymore. It was a desire to know her better, to understand her life, and perhaps to share some of his own. He realized that this was the part of life he had been missing: connection, vulnerability, and the courage to step into something uncertain but meaningful. Jason also began to notice subtle changes in himself. He felt more patient, more willing to pause and observe rather than react immediately. He listened more attentively to Max, noticing the boy's small triumphs and quiet struggles with newfound appreciation. He realized that the empathy he was developing for Lily was spilling over into other parts of his life, making him a better father, a better friend, and perhaps even a better man. By the end of the week, Jason had made a decision. He would not interfere with Lily's life in any way. He would step back from the task, refuse the client, and let events unfold naturally. But he also felt a quiet hope that he might still have a chance to meet her again, not as a saboteur, but as someone genuinely interested in knowing her. The thought made him nervous and excited all at once. He knew that approaching her honestly would be challenging, but it was the only way forward. Jason understood something else now. Life was unpredictable, and sometimes the most unexpected encounters were the ones that taught the most valuable lessons. Lily had shown him that kindness, resilience, and authenticity could transform even ordinary moments into something extraordinary. He realized that he had been given a rare opportunity, not just to witness her character, but to reflect on his own values and choices. As he prepared for bed that night, Jason felt a sense of clarity he hadn't experienced in years. The task he had accepted no longer mattered. What mattered was honesty, empathy, and the potential for real human connection. He knew that tomorrow, and every day after, he would carry the lessons he had learned from Lily with him. He would approach life with more care, more awareness, and more courage to do the right thing, even when it was difficult. For the first time in a long while, Jason felt a quiet peace. He wasn't just a man struggling to balance work and fatherhood. He was a man learning to navigate life with integrity, guided by the memory of someone who had reminded him of what truly mattered. Lily had changed something in him, not just in the way he viewed his task, but in the way he viewed himself. He realized that genuine connection, honesty, and empathy were far more powerful than money, convenience, or temporary gain. And so, Jason drifted to sleep that night, carrying with him the warmth of a stranger's smile, the lessons of a brief encounter, and the hope that life could still surprise him in beautiful, meaningful ways. He didn't know what tomorrow would bring, or whether he would ever see Lily again. But he did know one thing: he could no longer compromise his values for anyone or anything. And in that realization, he found a strength he hadn't known he possessed, a courage born not of obligation, but of the desire to do what was right. Jason could no longer ignore the growing weight of his thoughts. Every day since that first cafe encounter, he had replayed Lily's laughter, her gentle voice, and the bright spark in her eyes. Her presence had left a mark on him he couldn't shake off. It was no longer just about the task he had been given. It was about something much deeper. He found himself thinking about how he could make things right, how he could step away from the plan that went against his conscience. And yet, he felt a growing fear of what might happen if Lily ever found out what he had been asked to do. The following week, by what felt like chance but was probably fate, Jason found himself in the same neighborhood where the cafe was located. He had errands to run and Max was at school, leaving him with a rare pocket of free time. He debated whether to go in and see if Lily might be there again. Part of him wanted to avoid her completely, worried that any interaction could reveal too much, or worse, that she might sense the truth. But another, stronger part of him urged him to see her, to observe her again, to understand her better, and perhaps, if the moment allowed, to connect honestly. He walked past the cafe, taking a deep breath, and stepped inside. The warm air, the smell of fresh coffee, and the faint hum of conversation greeted him like an old friend. His eyes scanned the room, and there she was, Lily, seated at a corner table, sketching in a small notebook. She didn't notice him at first, lost in her own world, her hand moving gracefully across the page as she drew. Jason felt a mix of admiration and anxiety. She was beautiful in her focus, her concentration adding a layer of intensity to the gentle warmth he had remembered. Jason hesitated near the entrance, unsure whether to approach or simply watch from afar. But as he lingered, Lily looked up and caught his gaze. There was a flicker of recognition in her eyes, a moment of curiosity. She smiled politely, a small, knowing smile that seemed to say, "Hello, I notice you." Jason felt his heart skip a beat. He had not planned this, had not rehearsed how to behave, and yet he felt an undeniable pull toward her. Summoning his courage, Jason walked over to her table. "Hi," he said softly, trying to keep his voice casual. Lily's smile widened, friendly and welcoming. "Hi," she replied, her tone light and genuine. "I feel like I've seen you before." "Didn't we meet?" Jason's stomach tightened. The moment had come, the moment he might have to explain everything or risk letting his secret linger. He swallowed hard, trying to gauge the right words. I don't think we've officially met," Jason said carefully, forcing a casual tone. "I just remember seeing you here a little while ago." Lily tilted her head, studying him with those sharp, curious eyes. "I see." "Well, I'm Lily," she said, holding out her hand with a friendly gesture. "Jason," he replied, shaking it gently, feeling a strange warmth at the simple connection. They began talking, first casually, about the cafe, the weather, and small details of daily life. Jason felt a sense of relief at her openness and her ease, which put him at unexpected comfort. But the thought of the assignment never left his mind. He had promised someone he would interfere in her life, yet here he was, genuinely interested in her as a person. The conflict gnawed at him, an invisible weight pressing on his chest, reminding him of the moral line he had crossed by even accepting the task. As the conversation deepened, Lily shared more of her thoughts and experiences. She spoke about the challenges she faced as a dwarf in a world that wasn't always understanding, about moments when people underestimated her, and about how she learned to navigate life with humor and resilience. Jason listened intently, feeling awe and admiration. Her courage, her honesty, and her ability to stay kind in the face of difficulty made him realize just how extraordinary she was. Jason wanted desperately to be honest with her, to tell her everything, the assignment, the money, the plan to interfere, but fear held him back. What if she was angry? What if she never wanted to see him again? The thought of losing her before they had even begun to connect was unbearable. And yet, he knew that he couldn't continue hiding the truth forever. The guilt was becoming too heavy, and he could feel it changing him. Hiding it would not be fair to her, nor would it be fair to himself. Lily, perceptive as ever, seemed to sense his hesitation. She leaned forward slightly, her eyes searching his face. "Jason," she said softly, "you seem different today. Are you hiding something? I feel like there's more to your story than you're letting on." Jason froze. Her intuition, her ability to read people, had caught him off guard. He wanted to deflect, to smile and change the subject, but he couldn't. Her trust, even in this brief moment, made him realize that honesty was the only path forward. He took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the moment. "Lily, I have to be honest with you," he began, his voice steady despite the nerves twisting inside him. "The truth is, I was asked to interfere with a date you were supposed to have. I was supposed to make things go wrong. I agreed to it at first, but I realized that I couldn't do it. Not with you, not ever." Lily blinked, surprise flickering across her face. For a moment, silence hung between them, the cafe noise fading into the background. Jason feared the worst: anger, distrust, maybe even disbelief. But then Lily smiled, a slow, understanding smile that took him completely off guard. "You're telling me the truth," she said softly. "You could have lied or pretended nothing happened, but you didn't." "That means something." Jason felt a wave of relief wash over him. Her reaction wasn't anger or judgment. It was understanding, even appreciation. He could hardly believe it. "I didn't know what else to do," he admitted. "I wanted to be honest because you deserve that. I couldn't be the cause of something that would hurt you, even in a small way, and I couldn't keep pretending that I was someone I'm not." Lily nodded thoughtfully. "I appreciate that, Jason, truly. It takes courage to admit something like that. Most people would just hide it." "I'm glad you didn't." She paused, her eyes warm and sincere. "Honestly, it doesn't make me upset. It makes me see that you care about doing the right thing. That's rare." Jason felt a mix of emotions, relief, gratitude, and an unexpected joy. He had feared that honesty would ruin everything, but instead, it had opened a door. Lily's reaction showed him that integrity, even in the face of fear, could lead to connection rather than conflict. It was a lesson he would carry with him for the rest of his life. They spent the rest of the afternoon talking, sharing stories and experiences more freely than ever before. Jason felt a lightness he hadn't experienced in years, a sense of being truly seen and understood. He realized that Lily's reaction had changed everything, not just for him, but for the way he viewed relationships, honesty, and trust. Lily's kindness and openness gave him hope. He saw that life didn't have to be about deceit, manipulation, or fulfilling obligations at the cost of others' happiness. It could be about empathy, understanding, and taking the risk to be honest, even when it was difficult. And in that moment, he understood that he wanted to be part of Lily's world, not as a hidden observer, not as a saboteur, but as someone genuinely interested in connecting, sharing, and supporting her. As the sun began to set, casting a golden glow across the cafe, Jason felt a quiet contentment. The fear that had weighed on him for days melted away, replaced by a new sense of purpose. He had confronted his own moral conflict, faced his fears, and chosen honesty. And in doing so, he had discovered something unexpected, a possibility of connection, understanding, and perhaps even love. Lily stood to leave, gathering her things with a small, cheerful smile. "Thank you for being honest, Jason. I'm glad we had this talk." "It means a lot to me." Jason nodded, feeling a warmth in his chest that he hadn't known in years. "Thank you for understanding, Lily. I hope we can see each other again," she smiled. "I'd like that." As Jason watched her walk away, he realized that life had a way of surprising even the most cautious. One encounter, one choice to be honest, had changed everything. He didn't know what the future held, or how their paths would cross again. But he knew that this moment had taught him something invaluable, that honesty, integrity, and empathy could transform fear and guilt into connection and hope. Jason left the cafe that evening with a lighter heart, a renewed sense of purpose, and the knowledge that sometimes the hardest choices, like telling the truth when it's difficult, could lead to the most meaningful outcomes. Lily had changed not just the course of his day, but the way he viewed himself, others, and the possibility of genuine connection in a world that often overlooked kindness and integrity. For the first time in a long while, Jason felt a spark of hope that went beyond mere possibility. He felt a certainty that doing the right thing mattered, that honesty could open doors, and that perhaps, in Lily, he had found someone who could see him for who he truly was. And that realization, quiet and profound, made every step forward feel just a little lighter, just a little brighter, and infinitely more promising. Jason couldn't stop smiling as he walked home from the cafe that evening. The conversation he had shared with Lily replayed in his mind over and over, each memory a bright spot in what had been a long, gray stretch of routine and responsibility. Her reaction to his confession had been unexpected but wonderful, filled with understanding, warmth, and grace. He had feared anger, rejection, or even silence, but instead, he had been met with acceptance. And in that acceptance, he had found a new sense of hope, a belief that life could surprise him in the most extraordinary ways. The following days were a blur of anticipation and quiet reflection. Jason kept replaying their encounter, thinking about the way Lily had smiled, the way her eyes had held kindness and curiosity, the way her voice had made him feel both calm and alive at the same time. He realized that he didn't just admire her for her courage and honesty, he genuinely liked her. There was a connection that went beyond the ordinary, a spark that had started the moment he first observed her in the cafe and had only grown stronger since. Max noticed the change in his father almost immediately. Jason seemed lighter, happier, more present. He laughed more freely at Max's jokes, spent more time drawing or reading with him, and even shared stories from his own childhood in ways he hadn't done before. Max, in turn, beamed with pride and curiosity. "Dad," he said one afternoon while they were building a model airplane together, "you seem different, happy different." Jason chuckled, ruffling his son's hair. "I guess I've been reminded that life can be brighter than we think, buddy. Sometimes it just takes meeting the right people." It didn't take long for Jason to decide that he wanted to see Lily again. Not as a coincidence, not as an observer, but as someone who could genuinely get to know her. He knew he had to approach this carefully, respecting her space and autonomy, and making it clear that his intentions were honest. After a few days of planning his approach, he sent her a message, a simple, heartfelt note. "Hi, Lily, it's Jason. I hope you're doing well. I was wondering if you'd like to meet again, maybe for coffee or a walk in the park." No expectations, just to talk and enjoy some time together. To his delight, Lily responded quickly, agreeing to meet the next afternoon. Jason felt a nervous excitement as he prepared for the meeting, carefully choosing his outfit, rehearsing not what to say but how to simply be present, how to be honest and attentive. He arrived early at the park, sitting on a bench under a large oak tree, watching the sunlight filter through the branches and feeling the warmth of the day on his face. He felt nervous, yes, but in a way that was different from the anxiety of the assignment. This was a good kind of nervous, the anticipation of connection rather than fear of wrongdoing. Lily arrived shortly afterward, her usual cheerful smile brightening the space. She waved and approached, carrying a small sketchbook and a bottle of water. "Hi, Jason," she said warmly, sitting beside him on the bench. "I'm glad we could do this." Jason smiled back, feeling a rush of gratitude. "Me too. I've been looking forward to it." They began with casual conversation, talking about the park, the weather, and small daily events. But soon the discussion deepened naturally, flowing effortlessly as they shared stories from their lives. Lily spoke about her love for painting, about how she found beauty in small details, and about the simple joys that often went unnoticed by others. Jason listened intently, feeling inspired by her perspective, and shared his own experiences as a single father, the challenges and rewards of raising Max, and the lessons he had learned about honesty, patience, and resilience. As they walked along the winding paths of the park, Jason noticed something remarkable, the ease with which they connected. It was as if their earlier encounter had created a bridge, a foundation of understanding and trust that allowed them to share openly. Jason realized that this was the kind of connection he had been longing for, a relationship built not on convenience or superficial attraction, but on respect, honesty, and genuine interest in one another's lives. They paused near a small pond, watching ducks glide across the water. Jason gestured toward a nearby bench and suggested they sit. "You know," he said, "I never expected that first day in the cafe would lead to this. I wasn't sure how to act, what to say, or even if I should be honest, but I'm glad I did. Meeting you, it's changed a lot for me." Lily looked at him thoughtfully, her eyes warm and understanding. "I could see that, Jason," she replied. "You've been honest even when it was difficult. That's rare, and it shows a lot about who you are. I'm glad you trusted me enough to tell the truth." Jason felt a sense of relief wash over him. Her words reinforced the belief that honesty, even when frightening, was always the best path. The conversation shifted to lighter topics, movies, books, and favorite foods, but the comfort between them grew steadily. Jason laughed at Lily's witty observations, and she smiled at his gentle humor. Every shared moment strengthened the connection, making the afternoon feel timeless. Jason realized that he had not only been captivated by Lily's courage and kindness, but also by her ability to find joy in the simple things, to see the world with curiosity and openness. As the sun began to lower, casting golden light across the park, Jason felt a quiet certainty. He wanted this. He wanted to continue seeing Lily, to explore the potential of a real, meaningful relationship. He also knew that he had to be patient, letting their connection grow naturally without rushing or forcing anything. He had learned the value of honesty and integrity, and he was determined to honor those lessons as he moved forward. Over the next few weeks, Jason and Lily spent more time together. They went on walks, visited small art galleries, and shared meals at quiet cafes. Each encounter deepened their understanding of one another, revealing layers of personality, humor, and shared values. Jason admired Lily's resilience, her humor, and her ability to make people feel comfortable and valued. Lily, in turn, appreciated Jason's honesty, his gentle nature, and the way he balanced responsibility with warmth and kindness. Jason also noticed how Lily interacted with Max. The boy, naturally curious and lively, took to her immediately. Lily was patient and playful, listening to Max's stories, joining in his imaginative games, and even encouraging his creativity. Watching them together, Jason felt a deep sense of gratitude. Here was someone who could not only touch his heart, but also connect with the most important person in his life. He realized that this was more than a budding romance. It was the beginning of a new family dynamic built on trust, respect, and affection. One afternoon, as they sat on the porch of a small cafe, sipping tea and watching people pass by, Jason turned to Lily with a quiet smile. "You know," he said, "I never imagined that a blind date, or rather a date I was supposed to ruin, would become the best thing that's happened to me in a long time." Lily laughed softly, shaking her head. "Life is funny that way," she said. "Sometimes the things we least expect turn out to be the most meaningful." Jason nodded, feeling the truth of her words resonate deeply. He realized that Lily had not only changed his day-to-day life, but had also changed him. She had reminded him of the importance of honesty, integrity, and genuine connection. She had shown him that vulnerability was not a weakness, but a bridge to understanding and trust. And most importantly, she had taught him that love and friendship could be found in the most unexpected circumstances, even when life seemed ordinary or difficult. As their relationship continued to grow, Jason felt a quiet contentment he hadn't experienced in years. He no longer felt weighed down by guilt, fear, or the pressures of obligation. Instead, he felt free to be himself, to share his life openly, and to embrace the joy that came from connecting with someone who truly understood and valued him. Lily's presence had become a source of inspiration, a reminder that life was full of possibilities and that meaningful connections could change everything. Jason also took pride in the lessons he was teaching Max through this experience. He saw the boy learning the importance of empathy, respect, and kindness by watching his father interact with Lily. Max saw firsthand how honesty could strengthen relationships, how understanding others could create bonds, and how compassion could transform ordinary moments into something extraordinary. Jason felt grateful that he could model these values, showing his son the beauty of integrity and the rewards of meaningful human connection. Months passed, and the bond between Jason and Lily deepened. They faced challenges together, laughed together, and shared countless quiet moments that strengthened their connection. Jason realized that the choice to be honest, to step away from the assignment, and to pursue a genuine connection had been one of the most important decisions of his life. It had not only led him to Lily, but it also allowed him to grow as a person, a father, and a partner. One evening, as the sun set over the city skyline, Jason and Lily sat on a park bench, watching the colors change in the sky. He turned to her, taking her hand gently in his. "Thank you, Lily," he said softly, "for understanding me, for giving me a chance, and for being yourself. You've changed my life in ways I can't even describe." Lily smiled, squeezing his hand. "And you've changed mine, Jason. You showed me honesty, courage, and kindness in a way I'll never forget. I'm glad we found each other." In that moment, Jason knew that everything had led to this point. The struggles, the doubts, the choices he had made, all of it had brought him to a place of hope, love, and possibility. He realized that life was unpredictable, but with honesty, integrity, and a willingness to take risks for what truly mattered, it could also be beautiful beyond measure. As they walked home together, Jason felt a deep sense of peace. He had chosen the right path, and in doing so, he had discovered the extraordinary joy of connection, the warmth of trust, and the promise of a life shared with someone remarkable. And for the first time in years, he knew with certainty that the future, however uncertain, was full of hope, love, and endless possibilities.